Good morning, Nigunj. I think we are heading for a very much better times, I would say, rather than exciting times. As you rightly told, expectations are very low, and that is the point. It's very important. I think we are like in an extremely risk-averse mode. Not only the market investors, but the industry captains out there. So we are in a real risk-averse mode, very low sentiment, so things can only do better. See, I was so impressed with the chief economic advisor talking about the political stability or a strong political leader. It can awaken the animal spirits of the economy. It's very important. I think it is time for this. India has created a great foundation, a platform for faster economic growth in the last 5 years in the Modi one, and Modi two. It has to really work. And there is no chance that it will not work in this next 5 years. If we have to target 8% economic growth for the $5 trillion economy by 2025, it is very much possible. We all have to work towards that. And that's an exciting news, not to be ignored by the equity investors in this country. I'm very optimistic about things going forward in the next 5 years.
Porinju, if today there was no budget, how exactly would you have approached the market today? Given that budget's importance over the years is only getting diluted, and a week from now, budget would be history and markets would be aligning with global reality and the current earnings trajectory. If today there was no budget, hypothetically, how would you have approached the market at 9:15, what you would have done today?
I don't know what would I have done today. We are fully invested in the market as a fund manager. Anyway, budget, as you rightly pointed out, the importance, the relevance of budgets are coming down in the last many years, especially after the GST implementation. Things are happening outside the budget for the last many years, and it will be more so going forward. So the big picture focus, as ITNOW has taken it up in the last many years ago, and we have been following it up. So investors should be always looking at the big picture. But the kind of collateral damage happened in the markets to an average investor in the country in the last couple of years, especially in the last 5 quarters, I would say. It was very painful. I'm also one of the victim of that, a huge meltdown and beyond imagination in the mid and small cap segment, in the broader market, I would say. Even though Sensex and Nifty is staying at near to all-time high, there is a huge pain, a collateral pain of the kind of cleaning up happening in the economy, in the banking system, in the financial markets. So we are going through that pain, but it is all for the good of the future. So that's why I'm very confident. India is going to achieve that $5 trillion economy mark by growing at 8% or more going forward. We have the potential. But the only thing we are lacking confidence now, the sentiment is very low, there is a risk-averse mode. All these things can change with the so-called animal spirits of the economy.
Right. Let's also bring on board Sandeep Sabharwal.
Boosts when it comes to the farm sector, housing, some of these pockets, and you are tracking keenly the broader markets. Would any particular names or would a focus there be on some of those sectors on the back of potential stimulus coming in?
I think water is a theme which has been discussed in the discussion in the last few weeks, especially after a dry spell is seen in the monsoon. So there are some companies operating in the water segment. Now, one company, which I don't know whether I should talk individual companies, which is known with my name, is Veliyath. That's a mid-cap company, which we have got a large holding in our PMS. But the prices are down. It used to be at 500 rupees, came down to some 260, now some 320, 30, whatever. So I'm not asking anybody to go and buy it. But this is one company. It's like there is no other company competing with them right now. It's like in a monopolistic situation. Even though Atlantic has a division for the water solutions, I think they are lacking technology in that respect. Here, Vavag has got a global technology and reference. So they are strongly placed with a very large, over 10,000 crores kind of order book. I think India has to, I don't know whether there will be clear budget provisions, but the already government is doing outside the budget many things towards water conservation, etc. But water conservation alone will not help. We need to go beyond that. Even you cannot even fully depend on rainwater also. So the water desalination and reuse of water, reuse or recycling of water is now being made mandatory in many of the industry segments like power, etc. So I think that's one segment India has to go a long way in desalination or the wastewater treatment, drinking water treatment, the water solutions. So there are many such themes which need not be fully connected with the budget. But when budget comes every time, the rural economy, agri-economy, housing, all these names come up. But it is still very relevant. Government is focusing on the housing and the agri and rural segment, the social sectors. So I think there are companies in the now a company like Godrej Agrovet. There are many companies which are focused in the agri and rural economy. There is a DCM Sriram Industries. There are DCM Sriram Limited. There are many such companies, but all these are in the mid-cap and they are totally ignored. So I think investors should look for some of the traditional companies also, which are ignored, where there was no capex happening in the last many years due to the slowdown. So again, we are heading for another capex cycle after 10 years of stagnation. So if keep it in mind, investors can find many themes and many good companies in the mid-cap segment also, which can progress, which can grow very impressively from here. So Mahindra Life is one company. It's I think they're talking much about the low-cost housing. The stock is also at very much near the one-year low or multi-year lows. And I have no interest in the Mahindra Life space. We have a holding in Godrej Agrovet in the PMS. I'm just telling some themes and some companies, but there are many. I find there are scores of good companies in the mid-cap and large small caps where investors can bet on at this point of time with a 5 to 10 years in perspective.
Okay, Porinju, more on that water theme, exactly what you guys, Nikunj, along with Nilesh, were talking about. And Porinju gave us some of the interesting ideas as well. He said Godrej Agrovet. He also talked about Veliyath Vabag being one such stock, which could look interesting, considering that we've seen the kind of water scarcity prevalent in some of the southern parts of the country and how serious is the government is for tackling this water scarcity. But aside of that, Porinju, tell me, what's the farmer you expecting? How do you think the government is going to finally prop up this rural distress that the economy has been marred with?
I feel, as Nikunj was talking earlier, I think no bad news is good news in this budget. And there is no big expectations. The sentiment is low. But investors are forgetting very certain important things in such a down market sentiment. Today, India's market cap to the GDP as a percentage is around 80-85%. Whereas some investors are comparing today's situation before the fall in 2008. I think just before the fall in the market crash in 2008, India had a market cap of around 140% to the GDP. So that way, I think I feel we have a very low base, and things are really looking up. But if somebody really wants to turn negative and pessimistic, there are enough reasons for that. They can go on talking about many problems happening today, and most of these negatives and problems and the pain what we are going through, it is temporary in nature. As we earlier discussed, India as an economy, we have pressed the reset button of the political economy, and we are going through the collateral pain of that. All the problems, the dirts and the frauds, everything is coming out in the corporate world in many segments. So a cleaning up process is going on. And India has implemented some wonderful, reforms, very, very major historic economic reforms, as all of us know, the GST or the IBC. All those kind of things are very, very important, and they are going to yield results going forward. So I think it doesn't make any sense to be bearish or being low at this point of time, because we are talking about doubling of our GDP in the next 5-6 years time, and we have the potential, as I told earlier, we have really potential to grow at 8% and sustain that for a few years. That will make things very comfortable. And see, we have grown in the last 5 years. We have grown well in spite of all those problems. And we have grown in a low interest environment, low inflation environment, and we have grown adhering to the fiscal discipline. That is more important. That is why the last 5-year growth is very impressive when you consider the background of the growth. And I'm very optimistic about the markets, not because I'm always optimistic, but I think even going by the rationality and the logic, I think market is poised for a positive surprise to investing community.
Okay, just want to mark what exactly the market is up to as well before I take that conversation forward with Porinju. It's absolutely flat for the Nifty, but I won't really data in the market. There are wealth tax, inheritance tax, something is coming on those lines. That definitely will not be taken well by the markets or by you perhaps. You won't like that, would you?
I don't know. I don't think this small taxation or a concession given may not impact the market as it is, because as I told you, market is at a very in a low sentiment. There is a fear factor. Basically, investors are scared, Aisha, unlike never before. It's like minefields everywhere, the landmines, especially in the other than the top 30, 50 companies. It's like minefields. We don't know which company, when are things coming out about a default, auditor not signing. There are so many of problems and corporate governance issues across the board. Now, many of the earlier problems are coming out now, and we have gone through that pain. So we are at a situation, I think it's absolutely at the bottom of the market sentiment. So none of these tax provisions can make it further down, in my opinion. So things can only improve from here. With a broader market view I'm talking about.
Right, Porinju, fair point. Nilesh, for a minute, let's hypothetically imagine there was no budget today. Then what happens to the market?
The market will focus on fundamentals with budget, without budget.
And fundamentals are not looking great.
Fundamentals are not looking great, but there is always hope. And market always tries to discount future. So we have gone through a transition where liquidity was tight, rates were high. This were being used to control inflation, improve fiscal balance. Valuation was also high in Jan 2018. Now today we have a scenario where compared to last year's budget, large caps are up 10%, but small caps are down 28%. So valuations are reasonable, liquidity is improving, rates are being cut, and PSU banks could be capitalized with reserve transfer or otherwise. There could be pickup in the economic activity. Two worries which we had on the side, oil and monsoon. Now monsoon seems to be progressing well. And if July and August rains are good, one could see pickup in the rural economy. Despite US-Iran skirmishes, oil has remained on the softer side. And let's assume that oil remains soft, automatically economy benefits. So I think the small and mid caps will start looking at the hope. Small and mid caps will discount the recovery, and that should be a good space to be in at this point of time.
So if you have to start a SIP, will you start in a index fund, equity diversified, or a small cap fund?
All
that I'm
three.
not getting there.
All three.
Somebody has a compulsion, let's say.
Multi-caps.
Multi-caps.
So if you are a conservative guy, you can start in multi-cap. If you are aggressive guy, put it into small and mid-cap.
Aisha, even on budget day, we are talking about SIPs because that ultimately really matters for a large part of our viewers.
Exactly.
That budgets will come and go, but it is important to stick to your financial discipline. So let's not lose sight of our channel messaging. Yes, budget could be a one-day event,
Yeah.
2-day adjustment, 1 week action. But ultimately what will create wealth is not to guess what will come in the budget, but understand the bent of the economy and are you sticking to a financial economy.
And understand the benefits of disciplined investment.
Exactly.
I guess that is what SIPs are. But on the point of budget, since it is budget day nonetheless, Nilesh, how do you think the budget will address the stress in the financial sector particularly?
So the stress in the financial sector, when we talk about, there are different aspects to it. In PSU Bank, it is lack of availability of capital.
Yeah.
Now, there is a reasonable hope that it will be met out of RBI's excess reserve via Dr. Bimal Jalan committee report.
Sure.
Now, since we don't know what that report will contain, it's unfair to assume that in budget there could be provision for capitalizing PSU Bank. The second is the NBFC scenario, where clearly there are some NBFCs which are coming under pressure. Now, one is ALM mismatch, which can be managed by RBI by providing liquidity, if there is a need to create a special window for NBFC. But the second is the underlying stress of the NBFC sector, which is real estate sector. So my feeling is that in this budget there could be some provisions. I mean, one provision which I will recommend government to consider. In the past, if a person bought second house, he was able to get deduction of interest paid from his income, and that pushed many salaried people, many businessmen to go for second house. Now that exemption was taken away. That is taken away the demand. Kindly reintroduce that section that will immediately create demand for real estate sector. As the real estate starts moving, NBFC ka आधा stress disappear हो जाएगा. So this is how you will have to go to a root cause analysis to solve the problem.